I don't believe for one moment that most of those who voted Reform at the last election are racist. But let me say this clearly. Nigel Farage isn't a friend of the working class. He's a fraud. Politics isn't a spectator sport, and neither is the long, hard job of rebuilding our country. We can't just elect a government, sit back and ask them to right every wrong. We need to roll up our sleeves and get involved. So let's pledge today. We'll work with the new government to rebuild our public services. We'll play our part in recasting Britain's industrial future. And above all, we'll work with the government to face down those on the right who wish to sow division and discord in our communities. And our message to the tin pot politicians, the street thugs, and any ragtag group that tries to promote their message of hate is clear. Not in our workplaces, not in our communities, not on our watch. Last year, I told you about my family and their story, a story common to so many of us. Working class people, hard-working people, some born and bred here in the UK, some migrants from Ireland, from Poland, from as far away as Hong Kong. People who came to Britain and built their lives and raised their families here. They and generations of other migrants from the West Indies, from across Europe, from so many other places are now part of us, enriching our communities, working alongside us, our neighbours and our friends. And they represent this country far better than the far right ever will. I don't believe for one moment that most of those who voted Reform at the last election are racist. But let me say this clearly and unequivocally. Nigel Farage isn't a friend of the working class. He's a fraud. A public school educated, private equity loving, NHS privatising, Putin apologist fraud. My granddad, Joe, came to Britain with the Polish RAF and played his part in the fight against fascism 8 decades ago. In May, I found myself in southern Poland, boarding an overnight train to Kyiv to meet our sister unions. I visited a power station, razed to the ground by Russian rockets. I saw city apartment blocks destroyed by missile strikes. And I visited the Children's Hospital in Kyiv and met some of those at the sharp and very human end of war. People like Katya, 14 years old, who was wounded by the Russian shelling that killed her mother. 6 weeks after my visit, Putin bombed that same children's hospital. Operating theatres wrecked. Kids with cancer traumatised. Doctors and nurses hunting through the rubble for their colleagues. So when I see Farage making excuses for Putin's illegal and indefensible invasion of Ukraine, it turns my stomach. Congress, I'll say it again, the far-right hate-mongers are no friends of the working class. They're not patriots, they are frauds. And we had the proof of that. We had the proof of that just a few weeks ago. In Southport, we saw a deep and unimaginable horror. 3 children who lost their lives in the most terrible of circumstances. One of our own, David Stankham, a CWU member, lost his daughter Elsie, aged 7. Some decided to use that tragedy as an excuse to attack places of worship, to loot shops, to attack the same emergency workers who rushed to save lives. Some used it to promote conspiracy theories and fake news, and some used it to drive clicks to their social media platforms. But that wasn't most of us, and it wasn't the best of us, and we should never forget that the overwhelming majority of people in this country are decent, are kind, and are generous. They're the ones who rebuilt a wall outside a mosque, who swept up the debris after the riot, and who gathered not to hate, but to show their love and their grief for the victims. And so I want this movement to be clear. We will always stand with the decent majority, and we will always work to bring communities together. That is our ambition and our responsibility. Our movements, rooted in communities across the country, on the shop floor, in the office, the work canteen, the community centre, the high-rises and the high streets, demonstrating by actions as well as words that solidarity is the living, breathing spirit of this movement. Solidarity here at home, solidarity in every community, and solidarity across the globe as well. And that includes our calls for peace, the return of hostages, and an immediate ceasefire and respect for international law in Gaza. An end to the carnage that is seeing innocent people targeted, trade union buildings bombed, and children starving, and a future built on a two-state solution, a safe and secure Israel, and a safe, secure, and free Palestine as well. Solidarity also means standing up against injustice, something this movement has always done. For the 97 victims of Hillsborough, for the Lawrence family, the Shrewsbury 24, the sacked union members at GCHQ, the victims of the Horizon scandal, the miners brutalised at Orgreave, and of course those who died tragically, and we know avoidably, at Grenfell. As a son of Merseyside, I am proud that the Labour government has committed to bring forward the Hillsborough Law. Never again should the state hide behind lawyers and legal arguments. Never again should working class families be denied justice for decades. So a new government and a new opportunity. Our movement playing its part to rebuild the country and to bring our communities together. Something we have done throughout history, helping to rebuild the country after the Second World War, helping to create the NHS, helping workers win maternity pay and protections against discrimination. And in recent years, protecting workers during the pandemic, designing the furlough scheme, leading the fight for a minimum wage, all down to this movement. But all of those achievements, everything we aspire to do, needs a growing, vibrant, inclusive trade union movement. Congress, employment rights count for absolutely nothing if you don't have a strong union to enforce them.